Okay, so here we go. I'm just gonna get started. I think this is it. If there are people coming in later, we'll address it later. Okay. So this is session 2 of the research skills workshop for quantitative data analysis in social sciences. My name is Ding He. I am a full-time lecturer at the Faculty of Social Science, but I also teach at the Faculty of Business Economics. I teach a class called Modern Business Econometrics. Basically, it's quantitative methods too. Moved to Hong Kong last year. I did my PhD at Columbia, studied economics and then policy. So that's kind of like what a little bit about me. For those of you who did not come last week, we got started on this, okay? We got started on this, but I guess you certainly missed something, but it is not like something you couldn't catch up on your own. Actually, I think you can I won't say this entire sessions or workshops, you can actually pick it up on your own, because that's what I did with myself on SPSS specifically. I studied before, but that's not something I use on everyday basis. I use this data, so that's what I do. All right, so this is for if you came here last week, then you know what this is. If you did not, this is your first time, then these are the outlines for the topics for the workshops. Okay, we started on univariate distribution. We moved over to bivariate last week, but we did not really do anything about it. So we'll have a few more examples. The format of this workshop is that we'll follow through the UK Data Services portal, and then they have a lineup of workshop videos and also examples, etc. And then we'll just work with you to practice those. Okay, and the goal is that you can utilize the 2.5 hour time each week in the next 2 weeks too, to actually practice on yourself. And then of course my role is kind of like, I want to say, since I am lecturing, but I'm more like the facilitating the learning process. So what are the essential elements of doing SPSS, let's say of course regressions, but data analysis, etc. So I'll show you what I've learned in the workshops and preparation process. Okay, so these are the topics, and then so that's that. Okay, so we need two major resources and help. One of them is what we call the UK Data Services. I'll be showing you really quick. And then the textbook, of course, you can access it wherever that becomes available to you. You can do that. And then it's the 7th edition of the Wagner's using IBM SPSS statistics for research methods and social science statistics. The statistical software is SPSS, and that's accessible from HKU. Okay, so and then like I said, if you missed the first week's session, we'll be going through that together again a little bit today. And then the data set that you will need is quarterly labor force survey from January to March 2015. Okay, I was suggesting the participants starting the very first week that you should actually get organized just to be consistent. I mean, these are voluntary. You sign up, so good for you. And my goal is that if you come and spend 2.5 hours with us each week, then I want you to at least get something out of this. Okay, so use this time for effective learning, not just sitting here and then I guess you would do something, but it's not like you wouldn't do a lot. Okay. All right, so these are what we have done last week once again, okay? But without going into the outlines anymore, I downloaded whatever I had for the class last week again, just to show what I have presented you. I'll show particularly the first comers really quick what I had done. So this is the survey that we were looking at. Okay, this is the data set we were looking at. So this is accessible through UK Data Service, but just so you know, this is I want to say a teaching data set, which means it's not really the entire sample set, but it is going to be a teaching data set where we can demonstrate a few examples using SPSS, okay, for the questions that we examine. Okay, so this is typical, I want to say, an introduction of what this survey thing is all about. And then And then there is also the specifics of the data set, which is called a guide. Sometimes it is called a teaching guide, but for this reason, this is the teaching data set. Once again, this is much more specific than a one pager, but it has, I want to say, pretty much like everything that we will need if you were to run, let's say, rigorous or specific regressions using this particular data set. But I'm not saying that you have to use this teaching user guide completely throughout the workshops, just so that if you were to use, let's say, this data set for your own research in the future, for example, you can actually come back to this. Of course, if there are things we were not able to explain or address super clearly, then I'll refer you back to this. But a lot of the questions that are presented in this user guide has already been, I guess, discussed in the typical sets of modules. So we should be able to, it should just be fine for us to actually do that. Okay. All right. So this is kind of like the content of this user guide. We have the intro to the survey. What are the major what are the main topics that are being covered in this survey? The data sets themselves, and then also in terms of the sample design, how actually did they obtain the data, and also the sample and other useful sources of information too. One of the things that I think we wouldn't have time to discuss specifically in class in terms of weighting. Okay, again, weighting the data set, that's something I think you have to spend some time reading yourself. But we do have, let's say, abbreviated example to demonstrate how does weighting work, and also how do we make explanation about weighting. Okay, I'm going to move on to downloading the data set right away, so that for those of you who did not actually came last week, you can actually have access to it. Okay. So what I did oftentimes is I would just, if I were you, I would just Google UK data services. And then if you do that with me, the very first link that pops up would be UK data service. If you go there, okay, if you follow through me, if you go there, and then we'll show you how to access the data first, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, Google UK data service, or you can type into this I guess web address ukdataservice.ac.uk, and then going over to Learning Hub. So this is something that's very phenomenal. As I was talking to Charlie just now, I did not know this throughout my PhD journey at all. I wish I know it earlier. So I have access to additional data sets. Okay, not that I would be able to use all of them, but at least I was hoping to know the existence of that. But I did not know this. Okay, so what we are doing for the series of the workshops here at the Faculty of Social Science is to kind of like teach you what's available, what are already available on this Learning Hub, in I want to say in facilitating way, so that we actually can help you learn the data skills modules. They do have a ton of information, just so you know. And then each module, essentially there are 3 of them: intro to survey data, longitudinal, and then aggregate data. Each module has a set of format, but I mean also the approximated time that they think that it will take for you to complete it. But I actually kind of like went through all of this because I have to teach the workshops, so I actually went through them each and every single module. I think it takes a little bit longer, just so you know, because you have to watch the videos, you have to get things set up, you have to look over where the data sets are, you have to familiar yourself with the questions, you have to think. So I think the explanation of 2 and 2.5 hours is not just an estimation, but it's going to take a little bit longer time. Okay, so what we did last week was to look at introduction to survey data, and then this week we'll move on to intro to longitudinal data, and then the next 2 weeks we'll move on to intro to aggregate data. And then after the Christmas break, when we come back in, I think January, we probably will launch it in February. I haven't thought about the schedule yet. We'll look into R. But I think, you know, what the takeaway I got so far, preparing and organizing the workshops are, you're going to be equipped with, I want to say, 2 sets of statistical softwares, SPSS and R, with both very much essential for today's research work, whatever level you are, either at the master's level or at the PhD level, undergrad level or undergraduate level. I mean, it's all going to help you. But there are more than enough info that that you will need for your research purpose for now. So you take however much you think that's necessary for you. But I think, you know, what we do in the workshops is to lead you into the I want to say to the I guess, you know, to the essentials of the series of the data analysis, and then you take it from there, because there's much more than this. I don't think it's going to be something you can cover in 10 hours. Okay. All right. I doubt we'll be able to go through everything in longitudinal data today, which is, you know, most likely going to be the case, because I actually spent, I want to say, 3 hours going through everything in longitudinal data over the weekend. So if that's the case, I will just, you know, lead you into the things that we can do in class. I would encourage you to finish the session if you can, up to the point that we are going to work on that together. But if you can't, I understand, because this is not a required class. This is very much optional. And then so it's entirely up to you. Now, if we go over to introduction to data, to survey data. We started on this last week from module introduction, but I'm not going to go through this all over again. We did what are surveys, we did what is sampling, we did research question and research example, where to find survey data, and then we move on to getting started with survey data, intro to the data. So downloading the open teaching data set, that's where I want you to go, okay? First of all, you wanted to be able to make sure that you have installed SPSS via HKU. If you don't already know how to do that, again, what I do is, again, I Googled SPSS HKU, and then the very first portal leads me into this, okay? But when you click on download and then installation, I think there could be some issues, okay? Which I'm definitely not an expert on. You can figure that out. So either talk to librarians or your classmates or peers, and then see how they can help. I just, you know, I'm happy that I was lucky enough to install on my laptop in one setting, and I wasn't on campus when I was installing it, so I had to use something called Cisco, probably. Yeah, I have to use something called Cisco to dial in remotely and then have access to that. But I was able to put it on, so I was able to run it. But like I said, it's not an everyday thing I use, so I would leave that up to you too. But you have access to SPSS for free. I think that's awesome. Okay, you can use it within an outside HKU campus. Oh yeah, this is the configuration thing I had to do when I was running this outside campus. But I guess you can read through this. They are very much tutorial. If you want to do research, here's what I would share with you about my experience doing research in the past 10 years. A lot of things are going to be self-taught, okay? Your professors or mentors are only gonna, at the best, to give you, I want to say, heads up of what you can do, and then everything else is left to you, okay? My entire decision writing process, I probably talked with my advisor for 10 hours, probably, meetings, like 20 meetings, something like that, throughout a year and a half. But mostly I have to do the work myself. I have to come up with a question. If I have any questions about Stata code, which I have a lot, I'm on my own. I don't think anyone's going to teach me. And Stata wasn't a course that was taught in grad school anyways. It's just not possible. So, but everybody has to learn on their own. So that's the same thing with you guys. So I wanted to show you this. So you just do this and follow through. Shouldn't be any problem. But if you run into a hiccup, I'm sure there are resources to help you with information technology service at HKU. Okay. All right. Going back to the data, this is where you download it, and then you find and download it. If wanted to point you to this really quick, accept analytics. When you are at this page, oftentimes take some time to read what the I guess the web portal is providing you with. What are accessible? Number one, and number two, take a little bit of time going through every tab and then see what's available. Okay. For example, for this, if you were going to access the data only, you can click on access data. Okay, and then access online, but you already have this. Okay, you already have this. You are actually going to download it to your laptop. Okay, so there are three formats. I guess we are gonna just use it for the SPSS format. You can go over to Stata when you become proficient. There is no, I want to say, better or worse addition of using statistical software. They are all serving the same purpose. So you can just feel free and download it, and that's it. If you click on it, and then it will download. Now, given that I already have it, so I'm not gonna download it anymore. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it to you to do it. All right, so that's that. You download the data, and then so we talked about weighting last week. We talked about visualizing the data. We were looking at bar charts, histogram, and then we talked about presenting graph and charts last week, and then I think we stopped the abstainism in the UK example. Yeah, we did not stop there. We actually went on to the two-way table. So I'm just going to start from the two-way table, which is the bivariate variables thing that we're talking about this week. I'm just going to starting from this. And then move forward. Okay. Now, just to give you a heads up of what the actual data set looks like, I'm gonna. Oh, okay. This is the survey. Close all tabs. Where's my data? Okay, so this is my data. Just to give you a heads up of the data set or what it looks like. I'm just gonna, once you download it, there are a bunch of ways to I guess to open the data set, but I think the simplest way is just to double click and then let it open on its own, and then you'll be able to see that. Okay. Let's give it a quick few seconds to load, and then once it gets loaded up, and then I'll show you what it is. Okay. I asked the department secretary to email you the PowerPoint slides and also the lecture materials I supply for the first week. If you just enroll for the second week, to definitely reach out to them and ask them to send you again, because they incorporate several handouts. I think it will be helpful to get you started. Okay, so there are two essentially, once you open it up, there are two windows, as you see. One of them is the viewer, the other one is going to be the data thing. For the data thing, there are two sets of things I wanted you to pay attention to. One of them is called what we call the data view. Okay, this is not working, but that's okay. One of them is called the data view. Basically, it gives you everything about the data. It's kind of like an Excel. I'm sure you know what Excel is. It is just like an Excel. You open it up. It has columns. It has rows. Rows are observations. Columns are I guess variables. Okay. So this is going to be a cross-section data that we are looking at right now. And then specifically, what are the variables are? These are going to be the rundown of the specific variables. Like there are, for each and every of the variable, it's not going to be the actual name itself. It's going to be abbreviated. Okay, so there are a bunch of variables, and then the nature of that, like what type of variable they are. All of them are numerical, and then the width, and then decimals, and then labels explain a little bit more about what the variable is, and also the specific values, and then are they going to be missing variables, and then so there are different ways to code missing variables. Like the -8 and -9 is how they code it here, but sometimes they can code it as say a 5-digit a number like 99999. That's also a missing variable, but that's kind of like I want to say a computational habit that statisticians or data scientists may have. So it doesn't really make that huge a difference. Okay, so right align, that's kind of the formatting, the measure, in 3 different ways, and then etc. So this is what the data set is about. When we are going back to data view, when we are looking at what we call two-way tables, we are essentially considering how do we identify patterns within a data set by looking at two variables. That's what we were hoping to do. Okay, so specifically, we wanted to use SPSS to help us create a two-way table and then recode a variable if we need to. Oftentimes we would have to recode the variable for the purpose of I guess, make your research presentation simplified, and also applying a filter to a data set. So this is what we want to do, and we'll get started on this. Okay, so a two-way frequency table is going to help us examine the combination of the two variables, and then descriptively what are we getting. Okay, so we look at two-way variables together because we're interested in whether the two variables are related. Again, we're looking at correlation. Eventually, we're hoping to examine if we can identify any causal relationship between the variables, but first thing we need to work on is to see if we can identify any type of correlation. Okay, if we can do that, then we can investigate whether there are going to be assumptions that we can actually, or experiments that we can refer to as, even if it is going to be a quasi experiment, but you can move it from correlation to causal framework, causal relation afterwards. But the first thing to do is to look at the relationship between two variables, and then you can move on to, if you're running a simplistic regression and trying to investigate, your specific research question, then you can add on additional variables, or you sometimes call that covariates. Okay, that will be a discussion of a lot more. Okay, so creating a two-way table is very simple. For those of you who have already watched this with me last week, bear with me, just so that we can get students who came for the first time started on this. Okay, a quick video, 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes. Let's take
this short demo video will demonstrate how to create a two-way table in SPSS. To create a two-way table in SPSS, also known as a cross-tabulation, I'm going to click on the Analyze tab, hover over where it says Descriptive Statistics, and then click on Crosstabs. This will open the Crosstabs window. On the left-hand side of the window, there is a pane which lists all the variables in the dataset, and on the right-hand side, the row and column panes. To select the variables you want to cross-tabulate, click on them and use the arrows to move them into either the row or columns panes. In this example, we're going to cross-tabulate gender and full-time or part-time work. So I'm going to move the respondent's gender variable into the row pane and the full-time or part-time in main job variable into the column pane. If you want a simple two-way table, then click the OK button at this point to generate the table. However, it's often useful to generate row or column percentages to allow comparisons to be made. To generate these, click on the Cells button on the right-hand side. This will open the Crosstabs cell display window. Here, you can check the boxes for either row or column percentages. In this example, we're going to tick the box next to where it says row, but you should choose whichever fits your research question best. So here I've ticked the row button, and then I'm going to click Continue, and then OK. A new window will open with the output and cross-tabulation. Now return to the Data Skills module, where we will explore two-way tables further.
All right, let's just try that one more time. If you already done that, that's fine last week, and then let's do it again together. Basically, you open up the data set. What they have demonstrated or showed us to do is to go over to Analyze, which is very, very straightforward. So this way of doing data analysis in SPSS is, there are two ways essentially. You can code it or you can point and click. Okay, what this class is going to show you, or you could just do this consistently in the future, is that you can just point and click. That's the simplest way to do so, and there's nothing wrong with that. The results are going to be exactly identical the same. It just looks fancier when you are doing coding. But that is for two reasons. One, you're getting very, very proficient SPSS. Two, you're doing huge volume data analysis. You only need to switch data variables, and you have to run repeated regressions, etc. Then at that time, I think your point and click will become a little bit burdensome, and then you can switch over to coding. But up until that point, you don't necessarily have to do any of that. Okay, but you don't have to force yourself to remember when you do a cross tabulation or two-way table, you have to you have to remember the commands like, right away on top of your head. That's not how it happens. You have to do it, I want to say, at least, 5 or 6 times and practice over and over again to remember those. Okay, same thing with Stata. We do codes all the time, but it's not like, I remember the coding, I do it one time and then I'm going to become proficient in that. No, I've done that for 10 years now. I still have to look up a lot of things. Okay, Google a lot. There are Google forums I have to go to, not Google forums, the Stata forums I have to go to ask around. That's kind of like, the world I'm living at. All right, anyways, to look at these two specific variables, what they ask us to do is to go over to analyze and do over to descriptive statistics and then go over to tabulus. Okay, so cross tabs. Okay, so what you do with that is that you can also, here's another thing I would actually ask you to think. So they're examining two variables. They're examining gender and also part-time and full-time, number of part-time and full-time workers. So they said they are putting gender in the row, and then they're putting full-time and part-time workers in a column. You can change that if you want to. It just changes your way of explaining the output. That's it. Okay. In such a, you can look at things differently. There are multiple ways of doing data analysis. There's just not like one way. It's not I want to say one-way traffic. Okay. There are multiple ways of doing so. It depends on how you design your specific research question, how you observe that. Okay. If we were to follow what they were asking us to do, or what they showed us to do, so we can, let's say, go over to gender. Where is that gender? Right here. You could either just click on this and then it will go over to row right away. I think you could also double click. You can't double click in this case because this is I mean, you have to select two of them. Okay, the columns are going to be full-time or part-time workers, so we're gonna put it in a column. So this is what we do. Now the next thing they did was to click on cells. Why would they do that? Because if they don't click on cells, it's gonna generate. Let's see what it generates first, and then we can make a comparison. Okay, so if it doesn't do that, what does that give you? It gives you this, I want to say, the simplified two-way table. Respondents, gender, looks perfect, male and female, full-time, part-time worker, number of them, and total. What I was saying to you is that you could also change full-time, part-time to rows, and then change male and female to columns. Either way, doesn't matter. Okay, it gives you exactly identical number, but you just have to be careful with what you are explaining or what you're trying to explain. That's it. Okay, but there are a lot of different ways of manipulating data. That's, I guess, the beauty with that. What they were asking us to do to click on cells is that we are trying to add in the percentage statistics also in this table outputs. What do we do with that? Same thing. Go over to analyze, going over to descriptive statistics, going over to cross tabs, going over, same thing, click on cells, and I will click on rows. And then in my row, I would have percentage. If you want percentage in your columns too, then you can tick column. Again, it's up to you, okay? Whatever you want to do with your research outcomes, and how does that benefit your, I guess, interpretation of your research outcomes, that you're going to be the decision maker. Okay, click on continue, click on OK, and that's it. All right, so if you notice the difference between this table, respondents, gender, full-time or part-time in main job cross tabulation. This is respondent, gender, full-time, part-time in main job. Same thing, same title. The difference is that I added in what we call the percentage within respondent's gender. Okay. It's a zero-sum game eventually on the row for male. It is also a zero-sum game on the row for female. Absolutely, it's going to be a zero-sum game when it comes to total. Okay, the percentage within respondent's gender. So this is what we have for male and female. Now notice that we don't have the counts for, I guess, if you were to look at full-time, part-time, we don't have the percentage for that, but we do have the percentage for each specific variable we're looking at. Either it's going to be male or female. So that's it. Okay, so the difference between whether you click on percentage or not in the cells section, that's how it differentiates the two different tables. Okay. why don't we take 1 minute and then you do that and see if you can produce the exact same table. It's very simple, but I wanted you to do a quick practice, okay? It's nothing fancy at all. If I can do it, I'm pretty sure you can do it, okay? Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I was wondering, like, this is perspective, right? So what's the difference of doing it on SPSS?
If you're doing it on Excel,
Yeah, what's the difference doing it with SPSS?
there's no difference. I mean, it's basically the outputs are going to be exactly identical the same because you're looking at the essentially the same questions.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. There's no difference. Even if you were to do it in Stata, it's going to be the same too. Yeah, it's just going to be a different way of coding it. And if you notice, if we go back to this table, let's say cross tabs, this is going to be the coding language. Okay, this is actually the coding language specifically, like tables equals to sex by this particular variable. That's the name of the variable, and then format equals to a value table. So cells count row, count round cell. So basically that's kind of like the coding thing. And in Excel or in Stata, it's going to be essentially the same thing. Okay. All right. Okay. So this is it. Now I'm going to just move on to if you do that two-way example table, what we did was the first example, which is we did the very first example, which is right here. Respondent sex by full-time or part-time in main job cross tabulation. We did that. And then we selected, okay, then we selected the row percentage, okay? We selected the row percentage, that's what we did, okay? And then we were able to obtain this, I guess, output or data table, okay? Moving on, we're gonna do, let's see, a column percentage, and then this is what we are going to get essentially, okay? Let's see if we're gonna be able to do that. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna do analyze descriptive statistics. If you want to follow me, then that will be awesome. Okay. Cross steps, exactly the same thing for cells. Instead of row column, row percentage, I'm going to do column percentage this time. Okay. Continue, click on OK. This is what we get for column percentage. All right. Do you want to give it a try so that you can have these three tables? I want you to do that. Okay. How many of you haven't got SPSS set up yet? Or you all have it set up? You haven't? Okay.
I don't get.
You don't get what did you follow through the same thing? Oh, okay. So this is basically, I want to say the three examples the module session was trying to demonstrate. I mean, so that's that. Okay. Yeah, this is exactly what I was saying. Depending on which question a researcher is trying to answer, then you can either use the row or column percentage, okay? And then you can switch row and column interchangeably when you need to, okay? So yeah, this is kind of like a good question to think about. Always leave 100% totals so that your reader can understand which way the percentage works. Okay, I'm just gonna move on, and then if you need additional practice, leave your mark and then try to come back to this. Okay, so this is going to be what we call recoding variables. What does this mean? When we want to transform a variable by grouping its categories or values together, we want to change a continuous variable into a categorical variable, for example, ages in years to ages in bands. What does that mean? It means, for example, you are 28 years old this year. Okay, I'm sure you're younger than this. Like, let's say 25. Okay, you're 25. Now, instead of reporting the actual numerical value of your age, I'm going to put you into different age groups, okay? 18 to 22, 22 to 26, 26 to 30, 30 to 35, etc., etc. So that you're going to have a variable which is age, which is the actual age, that you have to transfer that to age groups. That's recoding variable. That's what we wanted to do, okay? For example, if we consider the marital status variable from this quarter label survey, and then it has 3 categories, okay? Single, married, divorced, okay? So we might be interested in the different. So let's first of all, let's examine if that's going to be the case. So how do we do that? So we're going to go to variable view. We're going to examine the marital status right here. Okay, so if I click on the value section, the 3 little dots thing, it pops up this window. It has 3 values: single, never married; 2, married, cohabitating, civil partner; 3, divorced, widow, previous. Okay, so basically one of them is married, which is number 2. The other 2, whether it's single or divorced, they are not married. So what does the question want us to do? So we might just be interested in the difference between those who are married, cohabitating in a civil partnership, and those who are not. So we could recode the variable into a binary variable for married versus not married, just to put it simple, like I said. So essentially, folks, can you tell me, if I want to ask you, I think it's a pretty black and white question. Basically, we're trying to change this, I guess, 3 values variable to a variable, which means married and not married. What do we do with that? The married variable will be 1, and then, the married variable will be 2, and then 1 and 3 will be another value. Let's say 1. Okay, just presumably. Okay, but for binary variables, I oftentimes will do this: 0 equals to not married, 1 equals to married. That's what I oftentimes do. Like 0, whenever there's going to be a binary, I would oftentimes put it as 0 and 1. But you can always, you can always do so as 1 and 2, or even you can even do so as 2 and 3. It's up to you. Okay, however you want to code it. All right, let's see what it wants us to do. So there are 2 important things to remember when we're coding variables. Always create a new variable. Never overwrites the old, just so that you know what you're doing. Number 2, always check the new variable by doing a cross tab with the old variable. This is just a triple check, making sure you're doing the right thing. In data analysis, in many cases, when we think we have thought about everything clearly enough, we may not because we're not smart enough. It's just because that it's a messy thing, and we wanted to be certain that we do the right the right thing. Okay, let's take another quick review of how they recode variables in SPSS, and let's follow and do that together. Okay. Oh, this is actually going to be a long video, so but I think it's essential that for us to just to watch it and see how they recode variables. Okay. So bear with me on this.
In this video, we will demonstrate how to recode variables in SPSS. For this example, we're going to recode the marital status variable. If we go across to the value column and click on the 3 dots that appear, we can see that it has the following categories. 1 is single and never married. 2 is married, cohabiting, or has a civil partner. 3 is divorced, widowed, or previously in a civil partnership. We're going to recode this variable into one with only 2 categories, 1 for those who are married, cohabiting, or in a civil partnership, and 1 for those who aren't. This is called a dummy variable. In SPSS, there are 2 methods of recoding variables, the menu-driven method and the syntax-driven method, and I'm going to talk you through both. To recode this variable using the menu-driven method, click on the Transform tab at the top of the screen. Under this tab, you will see 2 options: recode into same variables and recode into different variables. It's much better to use the recode into different variables option, as the other option will overwrite and therefore delete the original variables. I'm going to click on recode into different variables now, and this will open the recode into different variables window. The column on the left lists all the variables in the dataset. The center pane will list the original variable once you've selected it, and after we've specified it, the new name we have given it. To define the name and label of the new recoded variable, we'll use the output variable section on the right. As we've said, we're going to recode the marital status variable. To select this, either double-click or single-click it and use the arrow to move it into the central pane. Next, we need to type into the text fields in the output variable box to define the name and label for the recoded variable. In this case, I'm going to rename the variable MARCOCIV and give it the label whether respondent is married, cohabiting, in a civil partnership.
This is going to be very random, okay? By that, I mean, you can put the output or variable however you want to name it to be, okay? It doesn't have to be MARCOCVI. I would simply, let's say, I probably would just create a variable called married. That's it, okay? Just for simplicity purpose, okay? The other one, I would just spell it out as not married, okay? That's it. But you can do however you want to. They are not restricted.
Then click the Change button. The central pane should now display both the name of the original variable as well as the new name you've given the recoded variable. Now we need to specify the values for the new variable. To do this, I'm going to click on the Old and New Values button under the central pane. This will open the Recode into different variables old and new values window. In this window, we'll specify.
This is important. This is very important because this is where we mess things up easily, okay? Even if we think we can remember the code 1, 2, 3, what does that really mean? But we probably will mess it up when we recode it. So it's very important that you use your hands and paper to write it down and actually make sure you cross-check everything. That's very, very significant, okay? I don't trust my memory that much, so I actually write everything down. Even I'm doing this, I did it last week, I studied one time, and I'm doing this for a third time. I still have to write it down just to make sure I don't mess things up, okay? All right.
Specify the changes that we want to make to the values. Firstly, we'll use the old value section on the left-hand side to specify the values we want to change. Here, you can either enter the number of the category you wish to recode by putting it into the value box. You can select whether it's missing, enter a range of values. Please note, if you are entering a range of values, the specified endpoints are included in the category. Entering a range with the lowest through value, which recodes all values that are less than or equal to the specified number, and a range with a value through highest, which recodes all values greater than or equal to the specified number. Or you can use the All Other Values button, which applies to any value that you haven't already specified. Please note though, if you're going to use this setting, it should be applied last. Now we need to look to the New Value section on the right-hand side. This is where you specify the new value for the category. This can be a specific value, system missing, or a copy of the old values. Once you've entered both this new value and the corresponding old value, you'll need.
Just to give you a note on here, the copy old values, it only means, let's say, in our example here, okay, in this example, just to give you a heads up, we have this variable single, never married, married, cohabitating, 3, never married. If we were just thinking about making it very simple, the old values are 1, 2, 3. The new values are going to be 1, 2. That's what we are going to do, okay? That's completely fine, okay? That's also easier. Then that means 1 is going to be not married. 2 is going to be married. That's it. And number 3, which is the old value, we need to change it to 1. That's it. So that's what it means by keeping the old value, okay? You can do that. That's not a problem.
Need to click the Add button to add this instruction to the old to new pane. For this example, we're going to specify that the value 1 is equal to 0, the value 3 is equal to 0, and that the value 2 is equal to 1. This specifies that those who are married.
This is a little bit more, I want to say, typical and standard, but it's a little bit messier because you have to make certain that you know exactly values switching over to what and what does that mean, okay?
Cohabiting or in a civil partnership should have a value of 1, and everyone else should have a value of 0. This variable doesn't have any missing values, but if it did, you'd be able to see them in the missing column and would need to specify what we want SPSS to do with them here. We can do this by selecting System or User Missing in the old value pane, and then System Missing in the new value pane, and once again clicking Add. Once you are happy with the values, we'll click Continue to return to the Recode into Different Variables window, and then click the OK button. A new output window will open, showing the syntax used to create the new variable. Close this and return to the main dataset screen. Here, we can see that the newly recoded variable has now appeared at the bottom of the dataset. Now we need to specify the value labels for this variable. This is done by clicking on the 3 dots where it says None in the Values column to open up the Value Labels window. We then need to enter the labels for each numerical value. In this case, 1 equals married, cohabiting, or in a civil partnership. So enter this and click Add. And then 0 equals not married, cohabiting, or in a civil partnership. So enter this also and then click the Add button again. Once you've specified all the labels, click the OK button. If we click on the 3 dots in the value column again, we can see that the value labels have now been specified. The same recoding can also be done using syntax. To do this, go to the File tab, hover over New, and then click on Syntax. This will open a new syntax window. Type recode, followed by the name of...
I'm going to pause that. I'm just going to do recode using point and click with you. Okay. So click on OK. So I'm going to do this together with you just to show you what it is. Pretty straightforward. Transform. It's always good to recode into a different variable just so that you don't override it, and then you would have a completely new data set. However, what I oftentimes do is that I would actually create 2 sets of folders. One of them is the original file, the other one is the new file. You can override it if you want to. Okay, so let's follow through the fashion of recoding into a different variable. So what they're trying to do here is the marital status, and this is what we are trying to do into a new output variable. So I could do this very easily by saying married, or marriage status. So this is what I want to do. The label could still be the same thing, like marriage status. But just to differentiate a little bit, I would just make it even more descriptive, called married or not. Okay. All right. So that's that. And then I'm going to click on the old and new variable values. Okay. With that, we are changing 1 into 0, which is not married. Okay. Add. And then we are also going to change 3 to 0, which is also going to be the 2 variables. And then the third one, which is let's see, 1 and 3. Okay. 2, we're going to change it to 1 and add. Click on continue. That's that. I think that should be it. Okay. And if I click on OK, it's gonna create an additional variable, which is right here, called marriage status, numerical, married or not. And then I can define my values next. Okay. What I do with this is going to be, again, follow through that. If you're going to have, we have 2 values, 0, that's not married. Click on add. 1, that's going to be married. Click on add and click on OK. And that's it. If we click on this info tab again, we will have that. Okay, married versus not married, and that's it. Okay, so it's that simple. You can do a quick practice on your own. Okay, if you run into a problem, you could let me know. All right, and after you do the practice, feel free to step out and take a quick break, and then we'll come back and continue this. Okay, but this is again a practice you can do on your own for sure. Nothing fancy at all. Yeah, if you look at the data view, it's gonna show up on the 15th column, marriage status. Created based on the marriage variable on column, which column is this? Column 5, okay? So that's that. Yeah,
My interface has got different logic, and I'm not sure how to do it. Do that already in the new variable. Yeah, it's it doesn't allow me to do it. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Okay.
good question though. I mean, that's kind of funny because I don't know why it showed up like that. All right, folks, so this is it. This is very simple, but very essential too, okay? Very essential. I'm just gonna move on to the next section, which is called the selecting a subset of cases, which is called filter the data set, okay? What does that mean? It means that we are not going to use all of the variables. We only use a section of that, okay? So some of the data available to you in your analysis, for example, you may have access to data set which provides a sample people from across the entire country, but you only wanted to use samples from a single area, let's say a province or a state, for example. SPSS allows you to apply filters to the data. Now, how do we apply filter to the data? This is how we do it. So this is an example. Again, this has information from people who live in all regions of the UK. The table below shows the different government office regions covered by the entire data set, okay? This is a frequency table. However, we might only be interested in results from one of the areas. Let's say we are interested in people coming from Scotland, okay? The third last row, the third last row, which is called Scotland. What do we do with that, okay? So here's what we are going to select cases by applying filters in SPSS, okay? Let's see how we work on that. I don't think we did that last time, so we're going to
This short demo video will show you how to use SPSS to select cases in a dataset by applying a filter. Start by clicking on the Data tab and then clicking on Select Cases. This will open the Select Cases window. This window gives you a list of all the variables in the data on the left-hand side, and under the Select pane, we can see the different options for filtering in the dataset.
Oh, I'm sorry.
This pane gives us the option to filter variables based on certain conditions, on a random sample of cases, based on a range, or on a pre-made filter variable. In this case, we're going to choose to filter based on certain conditions. To do this, I'm going to click on the dot next to where it says if the condition is satisfied, and then click the If button. This will open the Select Cases If window. The variables in the dataset are listed on the left-hand side of the window. At the top of the window, you'll find the pane where we type the filter conditions and the numeric operators just below. Select the variable that you want to base the filter on and move it to the central pane. This can be done by double-clicking on it or by using the arrow. We're going to filter our dataset to only include those.
You can double-click on this now, select cases, because there's only one variable. We're not trying to create a row and column, so you can do this, okay?
who live in Scotland, so we need to filter on the Government Office Region variable, and I'm going to click the arrow to add this to the conditions pane, and then type equals next to the variable name. Now we need to add in the number of the value that we want to filter based upon. In order to see the value categories for the filter variable, right-click on it in the Variables pane and select Variable Information. This will open the Variable Information window. In this example, we only want to select those respondents who are from Scotland. So scroll down to this using the drop-down menu in the Variable Information box. This shows us that the corresponding value for Scotland is 12. Close the Variable Information box and type 12 in the box next to the equal sign. This tells SPSS that we only want to select those cases from Scotland and filter out all other cases. Now click the Continue button. This will return us to the Select Cases pane, and the new filter condition should appear next to the If the condition is satisfied box we ticked earlier. Now we need to check the Output section of this window. This section of the window gives you the option to filter out the unselected cases, copy them to a new dataset, or delete them. We have chosen to filter out the unselected cases. This means that they won't be deleted, just excluded from any analysis conducted while the filter is on. Once you have checked this, click the OK button to apply the filter. A new output window will open, which will show the syntax which has been used to create and apply the filter. When you close this window, SPSS will give you the option to save this, and you can do this if you like, to refer back to for future reference. Now we're going to run through how to check the filter has been applied correctly. You can do this by navigating to the Data View tab. When a filter is applied, the excluded cases, that is anyone not in Scotland, are shown as crossed out, with a line across the number at the start of the row. The bottom right of the SPSS window should also now say Filter On. One final way to check the filter has been applied correctly is to generate frequencies for the variable we filtered on, that is the Government Office Region variable. To do this, go to Analyze, click on Descriptive Statistics and then Frequencies. For a reminder of how to generate a frequency table, please see Unit 3 of the Data Skills module. A new output window will open with a frequency table that shows us that the only active cases are the 1,914 respondents whose Government Office region was Scotland, and that these make up 100% of the valid cases. Any analysis we now conduct will only be done using these cases. If we return to Variable View, there is one final thing to note, and that is that SPSS automatically creates a new variable for the filter, which will appear at the bottom of the dataset. This can be useful if you want to turn the filter off and back on again quickly. This can be done by returning to the Select Cases window, clicking the dot next to where it says Use Filter Variable, and using an arrow to move the filter variable, which in our case has the name filter_$ and the label GOFTOF2 equals 12, into the blank box under this option. Clicking the OK button would apply this filter if it wasn't already applied. Using this option saves you having to go through the whole process again if you want to turn the filter on and off to run analysis on different groups. Finally, if you want to turn the filter off and return to running analyses on all the cases in the dataset, make sure you're in the Select Cases window and click the dot next to where it says All Cases. Then click the OK button. This will turn the filter off. This is confirmed by an output window that appears that says Filter Off, Use All. You now know how to apply a filter in SPSS to select only certain cases to conduct analyses on.
All right, this is a little bit, I want to say messy in a way, but we can do this, okay? Let's just do that together, step by step, so we feel confident with this selecting variable thing, okay? First thing first, because we're doing this government office region thing, let's look at the data first. Let's look at analyze first, and then let's look at the frequency thing for the table first, just to start with. You can double click on it, like I said, and then click on OK. So this is what we are looking at, just to create the original government office. Basically, this is descriptive statistic frequency, okay? Now we are going to select cases. We're only going to look at, let's say, cases from Scotland. You can also look at cases from London, okay? Let's give it London a try, just so that we look at something different. What you do is, you're not going to memorize this right away, but you can actually look at it and then kind of like you practice on that. Going over to data, very straightforward, going all the way to, oh, select cases. Okay, this is what we got right now. Going over to government office, this is going to be the case. It's going to be if condition satisfied. Okay, so we're gonna fill out this. So if the government office, so double click on that, equals to, if we right click on this, looking at variable information, then London is going to be 8. Okay, if we're going to equals to 8, that's what we're going to do. I just did a little bit of a change. Okay, if government equals to 8, they're looking at Scotland, I'm looking at London. That's it. Okay, filter out unselected cases. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on OK. So this is going to be the coding thing for filter the variables, which are only going to be London. Okay, now just so you know, just to double check, let's look at the data first. Let's look at the analyzed data first, and then see if the variables are going to be changed. Okay, all right, now we're only looking at variable from London. Okay, notice that just as it says Unicode, the notice that if we're going back to the variable view, then the filter is on. That's what it's going to be talking. Okay, that's what the demonstration was saying. Okay, nothing fancy, but pretty much very straightforward. The data view, as what it showed us, is going to cross out whatever that's not coming from London, but somewhere else. Okay, because we're only selecting London. That's it. That's the beauty of, SPSS being very convenient. But I strongly advise against you to do syntax for at least to get started. Even if you're getting a lot more proficient, I don't know. I just haven't done syntax using SPS at all, so I don't have the right to comment on it. But my first sense of doing this for, I want to say, a few sessions now is that I feel it's a little bit complicated because for Stata, there is a do file. When you are recoding things, we basically are going to use a command called recode, select variable, etc. Maybe a little bit more convenient, but this is kind of the way. I just think that the things like formatting, variable label, compute, etc. It's a little bit more complicated than maybe I'm not familiar with this syntax as of yet, but that's what I would oftentimes do. All right, now the last thing is that when you wanted to select this off, you don't want it anymore. You don't want select case anymore. It's very simple. You just click on all cases. That's it. Or if you want to use the filter cases, you click on this, double click. This is also gives you this filter case. Okay, let's click on that. Use all, filter by filter. That's it. If we click on that's use all of them. But if you want to close it out, you could also just click on all cases. That's it. Okay. So use all, filter by the variable, or filter off, use all, execute. So this is going to be the difference. Okay. If we go over to analyze again, let's look at the frequencies for the government variable. It's going to give us, so this is use all. Okay. If we turn it on using the filter variables, let's see what it is. Okay. Now, again, analyze, descriptive statistics, frequencies. That's it. Okay. You can turn it on and off very casually. Okay. It's a straightforward thing. All right. Gonna move on. Okay. All right. So this is going to be a practice, explore level of certification gender using a cross tabulation. We use this again, this data set to explore the following research questions. When you have completed the exercise, check your results with those given below and use the quiz question to check your understanding. If you do not have the software to complete the task, you can still answer the question by using the table below. So basically, it's asking you to do a practice. We are trying to look at the correlation between two variables, educational qualification and also gender. Okay, and also gender. So what they are trying to ask us to do is to, if you follow through the examples, you will be able to get exactly what you will be able to see in the table. So why don't we do this? Recode the higher value, higher education variable first by following through this instruction. Why don't we just do that now? Okay. Going over to transform. Why don't we do this? Okay, we can do that together. I'm gonna minimize it. I'm just gonna follow through like you do. Okay, we do that together as a practice. So going over to transform, going over to recode into different variables. This is going. We're gonna move back this because we're not gonna do that anymore. We're gonna recode, let's say, higher education quantification. Okay, we're gonna recode value do not know. Hold on 1 second. Do not know equals to 7 into missing. So this new variable, the name you could name it as I guess you could name it as however you wanted to. I'm thinking about if you wanted to code it some names differently. I guess you can name it as a new variable. We call the don't know category is missing. Revisit coding demo. Okay. I think you can higher add new okay. Change. Okay. Higher add new. That's it. All the new values. It's asking us to change it to do not know value equals to 7 into missing. First of all, we need to remove those variables that we just created. Okay. 7 into system into missing. Okay. That's it. All else, all other values into copy old values, else into copy. That's what it asks us to do. Continue. Click on OK. That's it. What we need to do next is revisit recording. Okay, and then we can correct it by a cross tab between the old and then also the new one. Okay, so we're gonna do analyze descriptive statistics, cross tab. We're gonna do, well, first of all, we're gonna move back this. We're gonna do a new recode paired in this one, and then that's it. This is the total 100%, 100%, 100%. This is what we need to do to cross check on that. Okay. And then that's the first task. Okay. I did it really quick, but I don't know if it makes sense. So you can actually do it yourself and see if it's actually going to be matched. The second thing, create the two-way table. Again, filter the data set. Basically, I think you just have to follow through the steps like I did here, and then go through that and see if you can get the table. Okay. Nice. Frequencies. That's that. After you do that, I guess it's gonna take a little bit of time for you to do that, but it's pretty straightforward for you to do that. I'm gonna move on quickly enough, okay? Given that we have a limited amount of time, I'm gonna move on quickly enough to this sampling thing. But basically, what are we gonna do with this is that pretty much we're trying to estimate if we're going to look at a sample, not the entire data set, for example, how do we ensure the precision of our estimates? That's the question we're trying to look at. Again, we'll look at the impact of sample and results. We'll look at the 95% confidence interval. This is another feature of this UK data service portal thing. It explains to you, if you are not already familiar with the statistical concepts yourself, like what a 95% confidence interval is. It is used to express the uncertainty associated with population estimates. Like you have 95% confidence level to ensure that the mean age of a population. This interval tells us if we sample the sample population a lot of times, and we generate a confidence interval every time, then 95% of this confidence interval will contain the true mean age of the population. Basically, it helps you explain that. How we can establish the precision of estimates from a sample data, and then using a formula to calculate a confidence interval. For this module, the confidence interval, I'm sure you can do that mathematically. Now the problem, we all are being taught by doing how to do that. But you could also use a embedded estimation tool to do it within this portal, okay? But first thing first, let's take a look at this sampling precision estimates, and then what does that mean by random probability sampling, okay? Let's take a look at it together.
In this video about sampling, we recap how a sample derived from random probability sampling can be used to produce an unbiased estimate of a population statistic. We then look at how the precision of estimates based on a sample is related to, firstly, the statistic itself, secondly, how the sample is drawn, and thirdly, the size of the sample used to calculate the statistic. If we want to know about a population characteristic, say what proportion of people have no religion, we could just ask everyone. This is the approach used in traditional censuses. In fact, the 2011 census reported that 27% of those who gave an answer in England and Wales had no religion. However, most surveys take advantage of the power of sampling to estimate population characteristics. At the heart of drawing a sample that can produce representative estimates for the population in a predictable way is the idea of drawing random samples in which it's possible to work out the probability of each case being included in the sample. Samples like this are known as probability samples. If we chose an entirely random sample, we would expect unbiased. What does that mean? It means that if we take a reasonably sized sample, we might get the same proportion of people without a religion as in the population at large. For example, in this image, we're suggesting sampling 1 in every 50 people. And the sample is producing the same statistic as what we saw from the census.
So let's just bear with it for a second.
However, because the sample members are drawn at random, we might not get the same statistic. It might be higher, it might be lower, but overall, it's much more likely to be near the true population figure than it is far away from it. In fact, if we were to take all the possible samples, we could find that the average of all estimates would be the same as the population value, with estimates becoming increasingly unlikely the further they are from the mean. This principle is at the heart of survey statistics. Samples that are selected on some other basis, such as convenience, do not adhere to these rules, and survey statistics methods will not usually be appropriate. However, if the sample is based on a probability method, some designs may still introduce a bias for reasons of practicality or preference. Bias may also arise because those who responded were different in some way from those who did not. For example, more women than men
I'm
might
gonna
respond to a
pause here
survey.
because we can't hear, it's gonna bother us. But anyway, so you could do the check the answers later yourself, but let's look at the but this is like I said, you could you could use this math thing to do it, but the sample percentage kind of thing, I mean, plus or minus 1.6, that this is square root of thing. I mean, you could do that, but percentage preferences for basically this whole thing is to help us to calculate what we call the confidence interval for a percentage, which is very simple, but this is like an estimation thing. You could do that and then find out the confidence interval, but really I want to say if we click through these examples, what it really does for us is to look for examples for the preferences, and then we check the confidence interval and see if we can have the 95% confidence interval fall into the true meaning or the true value fall into it. Okay, so so that's that. This is an example. This particular activity, it asks you to determine the 95% confidence interval for questions about the data below. But again, you'll be using like a calculator, confidence interval calculator to help you answer the question. So I think this will make it even I want to say easier in a way. You already know how to calculate it, percentage and then total number, and then do that. So I won't bore you with that. You can do the practice yourself. Okay, you can do the practice yourself and then figure out the confidence interval thing. But I guess this is also a practical tool that you can use to do it. Okay. Like I said, if you wanted to get a certification and then complete the module, put it on your resume, I think that's good. But if you're not interested, that's also fine. All right. So let's move on to the longitudinal data part really quick, and then we point you to the right way of doing this. Okay. So the longitudinal data thing is going to different than the intro to data survey thing. This module we're going to look at large scale longitudinal social survey data. Basically, we are going to be looking at not just cross-sectional survey at one data point only. We're going to look at respondents over time. So this is what we're going to do. Okay. Instead of looking at like one wave of survey, we're going to look at multiple of them. Okay. So so here we go. So first of all, what are longitudinal data? I'm sure you already know that. Longitudinal data differences from cross-sectional by looking at, I want to say, samples or respondents in multiple points, okay, in multiple points. And then there are different types of longitudinal surveys. And then we are also going to show you where to get the longitudinal data, okay, just as a practice. So let's take a look at this together and see if we can get any sense.
This video introduces you to longitudinal interviews that collect data at one.
I think something is wrong with the volume thing. It's bothers me, but I guess I don't have a way to fix that. So
one point in time, or from different respondents if repeated. Longitudinal data are drawn from surveys that follow respondents over time. The same group of people are interviewed at several time points, known as measurement occasions. As illustrated here by the photos, a picture is built up showing how people's lives change over time. There are two main types of longitudinal studies: panel studies and cohort studies. Panel studies collect information from panel members who are typically sampled from across the whole population of interest and include respondents of all ages. Panel members are interviewed regularly, and measure occasions are called waves. The waves tend to be relatively frequent, with frequency driven by design requirements. So, for example, an election study might survey people many times during an election year to see how their views change. The next common type of longitudinal study is the cohort study, for which measurement occasions are commonly known as sweeps. These studies follow a cohort of people who have a certain event in common. Sweeps tend to be less frequent than waves and panel studies, as the goal is to measure across whole lives. That way, we can see links between factors in early life and later life, particularly with respect to health outcomes. Cohort studies, therefore, tend to have a membership of people who are the same age as each other at each sweep. In both designs, observations are repeatedly captured for the same individuals. As illustrated here, the same information is collected from all individuals. We can therefore think of observations as being nested within individuals. This has implications for how we analyse the data, as there are specific methods which take account of this design. One major panel study was the British Household Panel Study, or BHPS. There were 18 waves. Panel members were selected from across the population and were first interviewed in 1990 and 1991. And the same members were interviewed every year until 2008 and 2009. The BHPS was a household panel that gathers information on all persons living in the household at each time point. Researchers get a detailed picture of whole households and the dynamics between household members. That allows researchers to examine the impact of a health shock or unemployment, for example, not just on the individual, but on the whole household. Since 2009, the UK has run Understanding Society, a similar longitudinal survey. Understanding Society has a larger sample size and includes the BHPS sample from Wave 2. These household panels exist in a number of countries. Germany has the Socio-Economic Panel. There's the Household Income and Labour Dynamics in Australia survey, and the panel study of income dynamics in the United States. While they all differ slightly in their design and focus, they all ask questions about a wide range of topics, including employment, education, health, household income, and social attitudes. So a wide range of research questions can be answered using these data sets. Panel studies are often designed to look at topics like the dynamics of poverty, movements in and out of the labour market, and demographic change. For example, if we want to know whether people are more satisfied with their job if their pay increases, we will need to measure earnings and job satisfaction repeatedly to see if reported job satisfaction increases when wages go up. Therefore, many questions reoccur. Some core questions, such as marital status, are asked at every wave. Others are rotating questions, which come round, say, every second or third wave, for example. There may also be some questions that are only asked once. For example, if there was an event, such as a referendum. Cohort studies follow people who have some event in common, such as being born in the same year. For example, the National Child Development Study has been following a cohort of people born in a particular week since 1958. Other cohort studies include the British Cohort Study that follows a group of people born in 1970.
Just to give you a heads up, I think if you're able to get longitudinal data and follow through a couple of survey years, it's not easy, okay? I don't think you would be able to observe a lot of questions, all of them, just to think, oh, I haven't done research using these questionnaires, but my impression is that this is tough to get, okay, if you follow through. And oftentimes you have to connect observation, just to show you really quick. So I'll just show you, given that you're doing quantitative analysis, I'm doing quantitative analysis too. I'll show you what I'm working on, okay? So this is the data set I'm using, which is called the National Survey of College Graduates. The most recent one that became available in 2013, February this year, is done a survey that's done in 2021, but I'll show you really quick the idea of longitudinal data, so you know a little bit more of what the heck is we're talking about. So this is it. This is the survey I'm using. Look at this. This is a cycle year. If you're looking at all previous cycle years, hold on. All right, if you're looking at all cycle years, this is the data. This is very similar to what we are looking at the UK data surveys too. This is what you will be able to see, okay? So this is also just to demonstrate you the waves of data, longitudinal data, the idea of that. This is the National Survey of College Graduates 2021, which was made available, like I said, January 2023, and then National Survey of 2017, 2019, 2017, 2019. This one's different. This one is for a specific sample group, and then so yeah, this is the data to the macro data. If we look at, this is where I oftentimes get data, but I'm applying for the restricted data set now, but just to show you what it is. Okay, there we go. So this is the public use data file available for download. I'm looking at the National Survey of College Graduates. It's from waves to waves to waves. So survey from 2021, 2019, 2017, 2015, 2013, 2010. It became available since 1993. So all of them are here, okay? All of them are here. So this is exactly what's talking here. About this National Childhood Development Survey. But my shortcoming with this data set is that if I were hoping to match the repeated samples coming from years to years to years, different year, I have to have a unit ID to match them. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do it. And that requires what we call restricted data set. But anyway, let's keep
In the
going.
Millennium Cohort Study that follows a group of people born in the year 2000. Some researchers will analyse 2 or more of the birth cohort studies, as this allows them to examine generational change. There are other types of cohorts that we might study, such as the Next Step study, which follows the lives of young people who were in year 9 at school in England in 2004. There have been 8 sweeps of the study so far, between 2004 and 2016, that have mapped their journey from compulsory schooling to university, training, and ultimately entry into the labour market, focusing on the educational and early labour market experiences of young people. But the study also included diverse information on aspects of their lives, including social participation, risky and antisocial behaviours, and aspirations for the future. Because cohort questionnaires are designed to capture questions at different life stages, the questions will need to be appropriate. For example, the National Child Development Study asked about family backgrounds and child health in the early sweeps, while later sweeps ask questions appropriate to adults, such as economic activity. This allows cohort studies to explore long-term effects, such as the effect of early health behaviours on health outcomes in later life. Both types of longitudinal data allow us to understand the temporal order of events in a person's life, allowing us to understand whether, for example, ill health results in unemployment or vice versa. These data, therefore, allow us to understand the life course and the interrelationship between life events, behaviours, preferences, and later outcomes that affect people's life chances and well-being. In this video, we have summarised the difference between longitudinal and cross-sectional surveys. We looked at panel and cohort designs, their samples and questionnaires, noting the differences between them. And we've identified some benefits of these powerful surveys. In the next section of the Longitudinal Data Skills module, we will look at how you can find and access these data.
Okay, so that's that. Let's move on. The next section, like it says here, we are trying to make it available to you and show you where to find the longitudinal data. Okay, so first of all, again, the idea of panel data and also cohort data studies. There are many such studies universally around the world. So again, this is just some general tips or strategies for you to find your data. I guess I can leave that to you to read, and then I guess think about it. Again, it has to do with your reports and research questions, and then that you are trying to use, and then what are you trying to do with the data sets. And then of course, I think one other great idea that you can get data is by or is through talking with your colleagues or supervisors and see what's going to be available. Okay. and then this is just to show you on this UK Data Service data archives and services thing, where you can get social science data service or archives in general, and then the micro data that at the individual level, specific individual level, and then they deposit their data in the archive. Okay, so there are a bunch of those in the context of the UK. There are also a bunch of those in the context, I guess, the world. I think this is the National Longitudinal Survey is one of the popular ones in the States. There are several different types of them, particularly like in this one, like in SOS 79, child and young adult. This one was used often in different types of economics of education research for sure, but also labor economics in general. But this is National Longitudinal Survey is sponsored by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. You can have access to the public use the data sets, but also I guess you can have access to what I was gonna say. You can also have access to restricted data set, but you just have to apply for that. This one, the Inter-University Consortium for Political and Social Science, social research one is what I shared with you in the first seminar. I said this one housed at the University of Michigan number have a lot more different data sets that you can access. Lots of them are available, including the ones I was looking at, the restricted access data. You could also do that. Okay, so there are a lot of places to find data. You can basically what is trying to explain here is that you are never short of, I want to say, getting the necessary sets of data that you need for your question, but you have to identify exactly what you're looking for first. Okay, all right, I won't bore you further with this, including a check understanding. I'm just gonna skip this, but I'm gonna have you look at it later. Okay, so here the next section is to show you what do people use longitudinal data for, and there are specific 4 cases. Like specifically there are 4 cases, like with research questions and how they use the data set, and also what are the preliminary research outcomes. My plan was to look at it with you. But I guess we can do this. Okay, we can have you look at one of them, and then you can look at the other 3 on your own later on, and then we'll jump to the longitudinal data practice ourselves and see how much we can do with that. Okay, so we just look at one of them for now. So this one is, does premature birth affect a child's long-term health or development? So it is going to be a causal topic, looking at this factor, premature birth, whether it's you have the symptom of premature birth, whether that's going to affect your I mean, I guess there are 2. There are one, why we're looking at the child's long-term health or development thing. So the main topic is premature birth and child's ongoing health and development. So this is what we are trying to uncover. The data is used in this study is the Millennium Cohort Study and specialist data set. The key risk question again is asking you, do children surviving premature birth suffer from ill health and developmental effects compared to the children who were born full term, and how does this vary by level of prematurity? So there are a set of questions that you are trying to uncover. First of all, is the do children survive this birth suffer from later on issues compared with who were born full term? And then if this is after this layer, the second layer of the question looks at how does this vary by the level of prematurity. Okay, the main finding from this paper is that the higher the prematurity, the greater risks of their ill effects. However, the difference between each group were very small. So this is kind of like what this study was all about, what has been done. So the data, and then so there are the data used in this research, for example, is from 3 waves. Okay, the first wave is from 2001 to 2003. The second wave is from 2003 to 2005, and then the third wave is from 2006, a survey of that. And then these gives you the specifics of the data, what it includes, and then the research method is a pretty straight logistic regression on each one of the gestational age group listed above, and then looks at it's a cluster study design of this cohort study. Okay, those are the specific findings. Okay, I'm gonna jumping over to unit 4. Instead of looking at the not unit 4, I was gonna say unit 3. We're gonna jump into the data part of that right away. So we're gonna look at I'm trying to have you download the data set, and then we'll do that. So here we go. So here is what's going on. If we are looking at data from Understanding Society as widely known, this data set, it is going to be a household panel survey. So we are looking at longitudinal panel survey data, continuing from the British household panel data from 1991 to 2008. The Understanding Society study aims to do this. Like, there are a lot more households included in this survey, 40,000 of them. Collect information from all persons living in this household, and then the multi-topic survey. And then so this is, we're going to use this Understanding Society waves 1 to 10, 2009 to 2019, and also harmonized with 1 to 8 data set, which has the study number 6614. Okay, so let's do this. Let's download it and close the unnecessary tabs. Let's download it and see. So this is going to be 2 sets of data. Okay, so if we access data, okay, if we click on access data, if you do that with me, and then okay, then this one is going to be a little bit tricky, because we need to okay, all right, this is a new discovery. You need to register a account on UK Data Service, but you can still access that. Okay, I did register one, which is using my HKU portal. Let me see if I can log in and then download it. Why it cannot be reached? I'm gonna log into this because I refuse to connect. Maybe there is a firewall thing or something, but I was able to. Okay, but anyways, so this is going to be a data set in which you have to register, but registration is easy. Here, I don't believe University of Hong Kong was included here. That's why I registered using my HKU email. No, it's not. So I registered. So you can register and then request a username and then sign in. Just that there's firewall on the. Oh, I should sign in. Okay, I think my username was. I need to check. Give me 1 second. I need to check my username for UK Data Service. But I should be able to get that. UK Data Service. Let me see what my username is. UK Data Service. Okay. Okay, my username is a very long one. 1217 095823. I don't know if I remember my password. I'm not surprised. My password is not correct. Okay, I'm gonna reset my password. At the same time, I would encourage you to. Okay, there we go. I would encourage you to register accounts on your own. It's pretty straightforward. I'm just, what I'm doing is I'm just resetting my password. And then we'll download the data together. Okay, UKD 1217095823. Okay, I think I changed it successfully. Never. Okay. I was able to great. Okay, I'm gonna click on this. All right, I should be able to access data now. Add to account. Okay, so this is the data set in my account. So this is great to know. Add to projects. Create a new project. Wow, this is actually more complicated than I thought it would be. I guess, you know, workshop 2. Non-teaching, okay. Numbers 30. Demonstration. Purpose. Create project. Title to shop. Okay, workshop 2. Social sciences, HKU. Okay, let's see if this is not enough. Okay, so were you able to create a project? I mean, were you able to create a to begin continue access request? Complete action. So there are a series of next agree. Wow, okay, this is great to know. Close. All right, okay, let's see if we active. Download selected. Wow, okay. Now, folks, I think this is a good practice. I thought everything was download selected. Let's see. No thanks. Why this is not downloading? Oh, okay, it is downloading now. All right. So so this is a good thing to know. The UK data service, you don't need an account to access the first module, introduction to survey data. Even that data set was openly publicly accessible. You could just download it right away. I was able to show you that, and you can download it. But the second data set, this one, you actually need to create a project and then agree to a couple of terms and then download it. But I was able to download it anyways. Okay, so if you you should be able to create a an account fairly easily. If you have problem, you can let me know, because it was just pretty much register who you are. I used my Hong Kong EU official email ID. I did it, and then you should be able to do the same. And then if you don't want to register an account, you just want the data set, I could also email you the data set, which I just obtained. Okay, so let me take a look at that. So I download it, which is right here. I don't think this is actually workable, which is very frustrating. What's that? It's still being downloaded? Oh yeah, that's right. It's processing. Okay. Yeah, you're right. Thanks for letting me know. Yeah, it is still being downloaded. It's oh, okay, great. So I guess I'll just have to wait. It's almost there. Looking at the green processing. Okay, it should be done any second now. All right, great. So this is downloaded. I think so. All right, so this is the dataset SPSS file. Okay. Now, I guess, I would want to read the file first, just to know this study number, understanding what this is about, the data curation procedure. And after that, if I go back to the SPSS file, okay, this is the specific variables. Hold on. This is okay again. All right, so it's organized into the data dictionary, explaining to you what this is all about, and then different documents. This is the file itself, and then looking at different sets of data. So there are lots of them to look at individually, and this is going to be categorized. So again, we have to read the entire data set, understanding what it is first, and then there are different data file information we also have to know, but that's also become available here. Let's see. Okay, so this is going to be all right. Okay, great. Wonderful. So this gives us pretty much like everything. Okay. So, let's look at which wave we will be looking at. So there are many different data files that are included in this, integrity file. There are, let's see how many waves we have. Okay, so there are 18 waves of BHPS. They are going to be, for UKHLS, they are going to be, also 12 waves of that. There are also other documentation like technical report, etc. So this is a very comprehensive data set. Let's go back to what this is asking us to do. Okay, I already downloaded it. So we're using this whole thing, but sure, you're gonna look at this. Okay, this one, I guess we already done it. So you don't have to watch the video anymore, but basically this is going to show you how you download it. But this one you need to be registered to help to download this data. We already done that, so I'm going to skip that. The documentation survey design is going to be very specific. And then we also just explored that together, looking at the survey, how it is being done, the population is looking at. And then obviously for this set of data, they're going to be the unequal selection probabilities, and how we're going to address that using survey weights. And before talking about that, there is what we call they talked about the non-response thing in the survey, and how do we address that, and why is that having to do with survey weights thing. Okay, so there is going to be this unit non-response, and then there is also going to be this item non-response. Okay, just pretty quick, unit non-response is when the respondent doesn't necessarily take part in the survey. They could either say no, or they can't be contacted. So this is what we call the unit non-response. So this is one type of that. The response rate in this data set is between 50 to 80%. So that's that. They look at different waves, and then again, we will do the same thing with that. Two, non-response in longitudinal data, which is item non-response, which means you participate, but you may not respond to a question or two, or you would skip them. Okay, so for example, so this is non-response in the longitudinal study. So this is what's going on with that. So all right, so this is a couple of examples looking at it. So you may permanently leave the survey after a few waves, similar to what I showed you just now, the national survey for college graduates, 2019, for example. They will be the ones who actually are completely new to this survey for this cycle. They haven't done that before at all. They're also the ones who return from the last cohort, last year's survey, and then they're doing it again this year. But there are also third type of respondents who are the ones who did not complete the survey last year, but they are completing it this year. So this is what's going on here. You are looking at, like, for example, they entered the sample at wave 1, they dropped out permanently at wave 4. So this is one type of that. Okay, this is one type of that. And then there is a household temporarily drops off the survey. What does that mean? Which means they don't complete one wave, and then they come back, which is this category. Okay, they don't respond in wave 3, but they come back in wave 4 and also wave 5. Why does non-response matter? Because unit non-response after the first wave of the data is also called attrition. Okay, basically this is a typical data thing that we have to be worried about, like attrition. Non-response is problematic for a number of reasons. If you look at the survey weights documentation, that explains why. There is an additional problem with non-response that's specific to longitudinal data. So basically, this is going to be, just to give you an example, if we consider the economic activity status in these 5 waves for individual respondents in a longitudinal study, they were in employment for 4 waves, wave 1, wave 2, wave 4, and wave 5, but they were not employed at wave 3. Okay, so this is going to be a problem because a short period of unemployment, okay, occurred in wave 3, and this needs to be, I guess, this should be incorporated and studied, because here's what's going on. This is because this particular period, or in wave 3, okay, they were not employed. This would not be captured, and we would assume not in the correct way, okay, not like we assume the right way, that they have been continuous employment for the entire observation period. So this would be, I want to say, a bias in terms of transition rates or any other analysis or association if you are looking at the association for factors with economic activity transition. So so that if you were using, let's say, event history modeling and looking at the duration spells, are going to be pretty crucial. Okay, so that we wanted to be very careful with when we are dealing with data set problem like that. So so we want to measure non-response and we want to measure attrition. Okay, there are ways to do this. Okay, there are ways to do this. If we look at the particular variable of that, W outcome, I guess we would have to have you have the data set first before we can do anything about it. So here's what I would, here's what I'm gonna do. Why don't we spend the rest of the time do this, okay? Let's make sure, because once we have the data set, and then we're not going to use the entire volume of the data. We are only going to use a portion of that. So here's what we're going to do. Why don't we go ahead and register account on your own and download the data. If you have problem downloading it, I could possibly just, I guess, but to share with you, it will be too challenging because it's a massive amount of data set. So I would, if you have a, portable USB drive, you can come and copy it. I don't mind. But otherwise, I will want you to get hold of the data set first, and by starting to register a account on UK Data Service. Okay? Can we do that?
Yeah.
You have to wait. It's actually pretty quick. I think it's going to be like within a day or so, you would be able to get it. Like I believe I registered it like in midnight, and then like a couple of hours or something like that, it came back to me really fast, or the second day, I don't remember, but it was a pretty straightforward process. So I guess I should have shared the data set with you in advance before we do that. But anyways, let's take a preview of that. And then I am wrapping up really quick, okay? So this is the measuring the net response and repetition problem. Okay, so if we look at this particular variable for the final interview outcome, if this image itself shows for the final interview, so basically you would be able to understand the reason why they did not participate in the survey. Like for example, there are going to be missing variables, inapplicable, ineligible, or proxy interview. So there are lots of different variations of this. So we can determine those individuals who dropped off the permanency, or there's a redraw and later wave. So that's why it is significantly important for us to understand how do we use survey weights in the longitudinal data. Okay, so let's take a look at this using weights with and then we probably are going to I guess wrap up really soon, but let's take a look at this first.
In this short video, we'll be looking at a really important aspect of working with longitudinal data, that is using weights. Survey datasets contain information about a sample taken from the population, but what we want to do is use that sample to say something about the whole population. Data producers calculate weights to make the data more representative of the population it's designed to reflect. A weighting variable assigns a value to each observation in the data to indicate how much they should be represented in the analysis. These weights are an important part of ensuring our analysis represent the population we're interested in. There are a number of factors that can make survey data unrepresentative of the population. Factors such as the sample design or non-response can lead to certain groups being over or underrepresented in the data. If we don't adjust for these factors, our results can be biased or inaccurate. This applies to descriptive statistics as well as estimates from more complex statistical models. But weights allow us to compensate for these factors, and most social survey datasets include weighting variables. With a dataset, one way to identify weighting variables is in their names. Weighting variable names often include the word weight or an abbreviation such as WT. For example, W8 fin WT is the wave 8 final weight in the most recent wave of Next Steps, the longitudinal study of young people in England. Some datasets will contain more than one weighting variable, and this is especially common in complex studies such as longitudinal studies. This is because these studies can be used as cross-sectional data or longitudinal data, and in the case of understanding society, for example, the data can be used at the individual or the household level. So it is important to be familiar with the weights and apply the most appropriate one for your analysis. For example, Here are the weights available in the Understanding Society data. You can see there's quite a few. If you are carrying out cross-sectional analysis, then you should select one of the variables that ends in XW. If you're doing longitudinal analysis, then select one of the variables that end in LW. This is where you should consult the documentation, as this will provide information on what each weighting variable is and will guide you to select the most appropriate weight to use for your particular analysis. Statistical packages such as SPSS have functions built in that allow you to apply weights to your data. You need to ensure that you have chosen the most appropriate weight and that you know the name of the variable. Then in SPSS, for example, you can use the drop-down menus by going to Data and Weight Cases to apply the weight. If you are doing initial exploratory analysis,
So just
to
to
explore, for
two
example,
really
with
quick
the sample
takeaways
size.
on this. If we go back to the data set, most of the cases, we have to make sure we weight the sample that we are trying to we're trying to do analysis on. So basically what you do is that you'll go over to data all the way through to the end. You're gonna weight depending on which specific variable you're gonna weight the variables on, then you choose it, okay? But we have to work on that on a specific example. So I guess I'll show you that with the actual example, okay? All right, let's finish this.
Sufficient, then you should not apply the weights, as the weights might scale the sample size up and give a false impression of the sample size. Once you are happy that the data set has sufficient numbers and are ready to proceed with your analysis, in most cases, you will need to weight the data.
Basically, we need to adopt weighting, and then I think I would have you I'll have to find a way to have you read the documentation, or I'll give you a specific summary way. Okay, anyways, I'm gonna pause here for now. And then I'm gonna have you do a quick survey for me, and then for today, whatever you think that would be good for you to how do I okay, download. Move forward, I would like to hear your advice for the third workshop, and then because we are trying this new, as you all know, but we wanted to do better. So why don't you scan the survey, scan the code now, and fill in the survey for me, and let me know what, like, you know, how interactive do we want it to be. And then do we want to go through the documentations together or not necessarily, or should I just go ahead and click things through, or have you working groups? I'm trying to think about that for the next section, and then we'll look at the longitudinal data sample with the sample thing, etc. Okay, we'll do that. But after you fill in the survey, you are free to go for today. Okay, I did not take a break, so I'm just gonna let you go a bit early. But then we'll see each other next week. But let me know specifics that you wanted, particularly in the open-ended question. What do you want to do? Exactly, how can we best help you to follow through the thing? But basically, we'll do the same thing next week, follow through the longitudinal survey. We'll look at the samples together, but with the actual data that's already been downloaded, okay? And if you are, yeah, I'll think of a way to send you the data sets too. And because it's a large volume, but I have to think about how do I download it and send it over to you. I'll figure that out. Maybe I'll send it over to the department secretary, ask them to email you. Okay. Thank you for coming. I know it's lunchtime, and then you devote the time to this. So I wanted to again hear your advice and see how can we do better.